Hey folks, Doc here. I'm going to share some stuff with you today. I'm going to start trying to do this every now and then. I did one earlier on the U.S. Postal Service and how I think that has ultimately met its demise, even though it's still functioning for right now. But there are some other things I want to talk about. In my former life as a college professor and a dean of a college of business, I gave a talk to the Rotary Club in our area. And I was trying to think of what would a group of Rotary participants want to hear. I came up with an idea that dealt with what I considered to be maybe the top three threats to higher education as I saw them at the time. Now this has been a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now. And so I put this idea together and I talked about this briefly. But for me, some of the most critical things that I see happening or that did happen in higher education while I was there probably also correspond with what we see happening in society at large. I think number one would be a problem in personal ethics. People, if we ever were an ethical group as a whole, the erosion in those ethics has definitely increased. And also I think there's a lack of focus on personal development despite all the things we see that are personal development focused. Now I think there's also what I call the commoditization of higher education. So it's one of those circumstances where I'll talk about what that means and how that works. And also AI. And AI is a fantastic thing and a terrible thing simultaneously. So let's get into it and talk about it briefly here. When I talked about the erosion of personal ethics and personal development, what I saw happening was that people were connecting, they'd had a problem, and maybe that's always been there, it was for me, connecting my decisions today, short term, with the outcomes, long term. I didn't really think about the implications of what I did today as a young person on my future as much. The future was too vague for me. I think today students chase the artifact, the degree, the paper, more than the education itself. They don't want to learn, they just want the paper. And in fact, if they could drive up to the drive-through window and get their diploma at the diploma mill, they'd be happy to do that. And I'll explain in a minute why I think that's exactly what's happening. If we think about this, 25% of college graduates do not have basic skills in either numeracy and 20% in literacy. So they don't have basic capabilities. They're college graduates, but they don't do math. 25% can't do math and 20% can't read and write effectively. Many are functionally illiterate. Now, how do you get a college degree when that is your situation? In 2016, there was a study of nearly 64,000 managers, and they found that 44% of new graduates, like 44% of those managers said that new graduates lacked writing proficiency. 39% said that new graduates lacked public speaking proficiency. And 36% said that those students needed better data analysis skills. 87% of graduates, though, recent graduates, said they felt well prepared for their new jobs. Only 50% of managers who hired recent graduates said that those students were well prepared. So higher education has not been preparing students especially effectively for what they're going to be facing. Now that partially is the fault of the schools and partially the fault of the students. In fact, a George Mason University professor, Brian Kaplan, said that 80% of the value of graduating college in today's world is the signal that it sends to employers that you can complete something that you set out to do. Few students outside of the hard sciences, the maths, the science components that require technical skills and the demonstration of those technical skills, few students learn anything of real value in college outside of that. Now, if we think about this, here's one of the things that I thought was really important. Students spend about half as much time studying and attending class today as they would have in 1961. About half as much time involved in academic pursuits. But they're 3 times more likely to earn an A from the classes that they're taking. So if we think about it right now, the most frequently awarded grade in college today is an A. The cost of education has continued to rise and rise and rise, and in fact we keep hearing about that. A 4-year degree has gone up 180% since 1980. And of course, while that is happening, especially now, the number of college-ready students, the number of students who are college age, has begun to really drop. It's precipitous. In fact, they called it the enrollment cliff. And those institutions, even the ones that are not supposed to be for-profit, there's been a huge critique of for-profit institutions, and partially that's good. They should be looked at and examined closely. But my experience has been even the so-called nonprofit, the local small universities that are supposed to be religiously based, are also for-profit institutions. They have to make a profit to stay in business, and they are chasing the dollar. They are chasing the enrollment butts in the seats, as it were. And that leads to coddling those students and doing whatever, trying to do whatever you can to keep them on hand. You offer things that have nothing to do with school to make it more fun for them, and you reduce the barriers to them passing classes, officially or unofficially, but it's done. Because those students, again, are chasing the artifact, the degree, rather than the knowledge that they should be pursuing. They're not really receiving an education because they aren't learning things to make them better, unique, different than they would have been had they never gone to those schools. Now, if we ask anyone a question today, they're going to respond by going to Google and looking up the answers. Most people, I'm not going to say most, let me just back off of that. Generalizations are not true. But many people are not learning enough to have a good conversation with you outside of maybe a particular area of interest that they might have. Acquired knowledge and accessible knowledge within the minds of the individuals, well, that's becoming less and less easily accessed because there's less of it being absorbed by the students. So it's no wonder that students don't see the need to learn and study and transform themselves into something else when we live in a world where the soundbite and the Google search and the AI answer gives you everything that you might need. Now, if we go back and think about this, Albert Einstein said there's no need for him to remember things which could be written down. You could go back and find those. So it isn't necessarily a new thought, but I do think, myself, personal opinion, that having a diverse area of interests and learning as much as you can is important. We're responsible for producing, as educators and as a society, we're responsible for producing productive, self-aware individuals. And it was Blaise Pascal, the French philosopher, who said, since we cannot know everything there is to know about any one subject, we need to know as much as we can about everything. I used to tell my students that. If we are, I would ask them, why are we here? Why are we in school? And of course they would say, why are we here in this classroom? Well, we're here to learn economics, or to learn marketing, or to learn business management, or whatever, or to pass the class, or to get a degree, or to play sports, if they were honest. But in reality, what I would tell them is, we're here to prepare you for a future that you cannot predict. You have no idea what that future is going to be. And if we prepare you with a very specialized set of information, what happens when that information is no longer valid? Well, then we're in trouble, because you're not going to have knowledge outside of that. We need to prepare you to think on your feet, to be creative, to continually learn for the rest of your life, and to be flexible enough and willing enough to go get information when you don't know an answer, because we are preparing you for a future that you don't know. So we're responsible for that. Now, I think that's the number one problem, the erosion of personal responsibility in their educational opportunities. I don't know that it's ever really been there, but I see that as a major problem that we need to focus on. Students need to take a greater interest in their own participation in and ownership of their education. The second thing I talked about was the commoditization of higher education. And a commodity is a product which is widely available from a variety of different providers. And the customers who are buying that product do not perceive a difference in the product regardless of who provides it. So it doesn't matter who grows the corn. If you're going to buy corn, the farmer who grew the corn, in your mind, it doesn't matter. That's why you have the commodities market where you can buy beef, you can buy pigs, you can buy chicken, you can buy corn, soybeans, whatever, oil, because in your mind it doesn't matter who produces that. The quality of the product is no different. And that also means that if you're buying based upon that thinking, that paradigm, then what you're doing is you're going to buy based upon price. You don't care who did it, you only care what it costs. And the lowest cost is going to win. There's no differentiation in the product itself. It isn't practiced. So consumers choose on price itself. The cheapest wins. Now, in schools, with schools, increased regulation and certification costs mean that every program is much like every other program and every other college around at least in the United States, and maybe even around the world. They have to resemble each other because they're accredited to be very similar from accrediting bodies who don't look at differentiation as a good thing. They want you to do things that are very similar to other schools. The Wall Street Journal had an article back in 2024 that said Americans are losing faith in the college for all model. And in the past decade, the percentage of Americans who expressed a lot of confidence in higher education fell from 57% to 36%. There are 3 million fewer college students since 2011. So that's the enrollment cliff I was talking about. Nearly half of parents say that they prefer not to send their students to a 4-year college, even if the obstacles to attending were removed. And 56% of Americans think that a 4-year degree is a bad bet. The most recent survey revealed that 42% of college graduates say that the degree itself isn't worth it. And a Cengage survey from 2021 found that nearly 50% of graduates had not applied to entry-level jobs in their field because they felt underqualified. 50% almost hadn't even applied for a job in the field, in their degree field, because they didn't feel qualified to do so. And more than 45% have failed to see a return on their college investment. Now, that's a failure in the educational system. It's a failure in getting and convincing those students that they can do things, even though they're not truly ready. I mean, college doesn't prepare you for a job. It prepares you to think. It prepares you to have faith in yourself and to go out and be willing to learn. But when you walk into any job after graduating college, you're not 100% ready for that. You're not totally qualified for that. You are not competent in that field. It takes time to get up to speed. But you have to have confidence in yourself. And you have to have people who bring you to that level of personal belief. And if we aren't doing that, then shame on us as educators. So the collegiate experience, as we've been delivering it, is broken. It's not for everyone. And despite the fact that when I was in school, in high school, the guidance counselors were trying to get everybody to go to college. If you listen to Mike Rowe, he talks about that. Not everybody is college material. Many students who now try to go to college are not college material. They are not ready. They are not motivated. When I was in high school, the thing I wanted to do, my career ambition, was to graduate high school and never set foot in a school again. So I joined the Air Force. And of course, in the Air Force, the first thing they do is send you to military basic training. Now, what is training? It's school. So right away, I failed on my career path. I used to tell my students that my number one goal, my career path, my choice, my mission in life was to never go to school again. And the very first thing I did was to enlist in the military. And I went to basic training. And then I went to technical school where I had to learn. And in that time frame, I realized that I had to learn all the time anyway. I grew up. I became more mature. There was about a year's time frame there where I grew a lot from the age of 18 to 19. And I think if more people took that break between high school and college, then they would be more prepared for college when they decided to go, if they decided to go. And of course, in today's world, there are many, many options other than college. But what we see happening is students show up and they expect the professors to do a song and dance, and then they expect to get answers and not have to worry about really demonstrating knowledge and walking away with their degree. Again, it's almost like it's an assembly line or a diploma mill. So just showing up for class or meeting the minimum requirements in an online course really isn't enough to master the materials. We, as educators and as a society, need to demand more. And if you're hiring people straight from college, you need to talk to those colleges and say, look, we need more from you. And we need some demonstration that what you're doing is delivering people that we can count on. It's all down to the individual at this point. Now, the final thing I talked about with that group of Rotary members was that with the Rotary Club is that AI, I think, really starting with COVID in 2020, but also with AI later, the mindset of students changed dramatically. There was a lot of damage done to students in 2020 and 2021 when we were out of school face-to-face for so long. Meeting people face-to-face is critical, especially for young people who need to develop those skill sets. And the AI systems that we have in place now have made it impossible to tell if students are doing their, almost impossible to tell when students are doing their own work. I could tell typically when students were submitting work that was created by AI. And most students today, even the good ones, are using AI for the creation of some of their work at least. I don't like it. I didn't think it was a good idea. I think if students are trying to be better than using AI in any form as a completed assignment is bad. To help create the completed assignment was bad. If you use AI to gather information and to learn, fantastic. It's a great tool. If you take anything created by AI and submit that as your own work, it's bad. It's plagiarism, number one. But number two, it isn't helping you to become a better person. Now, I heard all kinds of arguments that students need to be able to check their spelling and their punctuation. But the students who do that and submit whatever Grammarly is telling them is the correct way to say something, they aren't getting better at grammar because they're using Grammarly. They're just submitting what Grammarly tells them. Or students who would not be native, English would not be their first language, they would tell me, oh, I'm using this to help polish up my writing skills in English because I don't know what I'm doing well enough to be able to do it effectively. But those students were turning in whatever the AI told them to turn in. They weren't learning based upon that. So I reject that whole argument. In fact, in today's world, I think the only thing that works for deliverables in a college classroom is something that is done face-to-face. They have to do the work in front of you. It's either oral or written, but you see them do the work and they have to construct that work in class with few or no resources available. Or you have to have a proctored exam like the schools which do competency-based education. I think those are the only ways to ensure that what people are really learning is what they're learning. Now, I'm a big fan of competency-based education. I think that's the way to go. And if I were making any recommendations to young people today or to families of young people, I would say go to a school which practices competency-based education. Choose that and make that happen. If you are hiring people, focus on schools which use competency-based education. Those students have passed tests which demonstrate that they have mastered those areas. The other thing about a competency-based education is that if you know the material, you know the material. It doesn't matter how you came to that. And so the professors aren't trying to be referees in this match between, is this a student produced outcome, or did the student write the paper, did AI write the paper? That's mind-numbingly tedious whenever you have to worry about that as a professor. And of course, it's very nerve-wracking because you're always having to be on edge and confronting students who you think are doing the wrong thing. But going back to AI, lots of people feel threatened now because AI is in use, and they should be, because if there's anything that AI can do, if they can do your job, if AI could do your job, you are superfluous at this point. And often AI is going to do it better. It's going to do it more reliably. It's not going to call in sick. It doesn't have a personality issue. It gets along well with coworkers. There's a lot of things that we could look at and say there's some positives from using AI. According to a 2023 study conducted for junior achievement, 44% of teens say they are likely to use AI to help them with their work, even though 60% think that relying on AI to complete their homework is cheating. Now, the reasons why students use AI are pretty diverse, but about 62% of students who use AI think that it's just another tool for their schoolwork. Again, if they use it in the right way, to collect information, to synthesize information, and then they put that that into their minds, and they think about it, and then they complete the assignment with words and with thoughts that have been created by partially the output from AI. That's fine. But if they take that work and submit it as their own, which in my experience has been the normal way that things happen, the students get the AI output and they submit it just as it was created by AI, then it's wrong. 24% of those young people were discontent with school or schoolwork. They didn't like it. Now, I don't know of very many people who enjoy doing school or schoolwork. I wasn't one of those people. I already told you I didn't want to go back to school after I graduated high school. It was ironic that I ended up getting two graduate degrees and teaching in the profession as a college professor for 20 plus years. Ironic that I didn't want to go to school, and then I spent all that time in school. Life has a way of doing that to you. 22% of students, those young people, believe that AI eliminates the need to acquire knowledge. Now that is dangerous in my mind. 22% use AI because of peer pressure. 17% fear that the work they do on their own is going to be bad, and if they don't use AI, they won't get a good grade. There's some validity in that if you don't know what you're doing. And then 8% think that knowledge is unimportant. 8% of young people, teenagers, think that knowledge is unimportant. So the inappropriate use of AI, in my mind, is one of the major threats, not only to education, but to society as a whole. It led to a lot of things that I saw in higher education. Faculty became disillusioned for the reasons I just talked about. 23% of faculty in a Harvard study found that, 47% of a 2023 study at Harvard found, a 23 study at Harvard found that 47% of faculty were pessimistic about the impact of AI. Now, most of those faculty were people who didn't use AI. So there are lower percentages, 22% of people who use AI or have that pessimism about what AI might do in the future. Yet I didn't run into any faculty members who were terribly hopeful that students would become much better prepared through the use of AI. They may have been open to allowing students to use it, but they didn't really talk about how AI would benefit those students in helping them learn as much as we should be focused on that. About half of students from a 23 study also in best colleges, about half of students said faculty had not spoken openly about the use of AI tools whatsoever. And 60% said that schools and teachers had not discussed using AI responsibly or ethically. And 51% of students in one study said that they will continue to use generative AI, that's AI that actually produces the work, generative AI writing tools, even if it were expressly prohibited by the instructor or the institution. So there's a pressure for those students to do well. They have an opportunity to use a tool that they shouldn't use, and they can rationalize why they should be able to use it. It's Cressy's fraud triangle put into effect. There are lots of things I could talk about on this, and I'm going to talk more about other things, but I wanted to get this one kind of in the can, as it were, to talk about what I saw in higher education, and to talk about why I would not recommend, without a lot of discussion, that anyone go to an institution of higher learning right now. If you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you want to be an engineer, you want to be a mathematician or a scientist, you have to go to get the credentials. But if you don't know why you want to go to school, then I would recommend that you don't go to school. You go find a trade and you do that. You take some time away from school, from the ages of 18 to maybe 20, 21 years old. Go get some life experience, work, learn a trade, do some things, figure out what you might want. And then you can learn from any resource. There are enough materials out there that you can learn any subject you want to learn and never step foot in a college classroom. At the end of the day, it's about what you can produce and what you can do on your own, and how it can enrich your life and the work you can do for your employer. So I wouldn't recommend everybody go to school, to college, without having some further discussions about it. Can it be beneficial to people? Yes. I think being there and meeting some inspirational professors, of which there are, in my opinion, not as many as there ought to be. Inspiring, concerned professors make a big difference. And they can help people who struggle with learning or struggle with situations. But college is probably not the best answer for a lot of people. Go find something else to do with your time, grow up, and then see what you want to do. And if you want to go back as a more motivated adult, great. But if you're going to go to class because your folks want you to, or because you want to go play a sport, those aren't great reasons to go to college. Go to because you want to be a better human being when you're done. And if you're not a better person, more prepared, thinking differently, more mature, whenever you're done with school, then you've wasted your time. It's my thinking on it anyway. It's what I learned from the classroom, the lesson from the classroom. And that's what I shared with the Rotary Club members in my area just before I gave up the academic profession forever. Hope you have a great day. Endeavor to persevere.